This is Wednesday, June 7th, 2023. Thank you for waiting. And those of you watching this tomorrow, you don't know what I'm talking about. It is my Wednesday night Bible study. My name is Douglas Griffin. We're in the book of John. We're in John chapter 18. Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane. It's the last, well, let's see, I don't know what it is because he dies by 6 o'clock the next day. So it's the last 12 hours, we'll say, of Jesus' life. And he's trying to teach these final lessons to the disciples through everything that happens, because nothing that happens is going to be a surprise to him. So he uses everything as a lesson. And that's kind of how God is. If we're listening, everything that happens in our life is some sort of lesson, some sort of communication by God. God never looks at us and goes, I know that was going to happen. Everything, and then he's going to use it to teach us if we're looking, if we're listening. So Judas has shown up. Judas has betrayed Jesus and brought a whole bunch of Roman soldiers with him who are waiting outside the garden area. The Sanhedrin council members are with Judas. Nobody knows what Jesus looks like because he doesn't look special on purpose, because we're not supposed to be, it's not his looks. Ooh, it's his hair that made me want to become a Christian. It's got to be his words, right? So he has no comeliness, no special looks that people should recognize him. So that's why Judas says, it's the guy that I kiss. He's the one. Judas kisses him, and Jesus says, oh, you're going to pretend me with the kiss, which is exactly what the person who betrayed David betrayed him with the kiss also. And so Jesus is like, really, this is so cliche, Judas. Then when they come to take him, we started in John chapter 18, verse 10. Now that they know who it is, it says, then Simon Peter, having a sword. So let's talk about this sword. In Luke chapter 22, verse 36, they were at dinner. John doesn't bring up the sword because John wants it to be a surprise that this sword comes out. But this sword had come up earlier in conversation. Luke chapter 22, verse 36, it says, he says to them, when I sent you without money bag, knapsack, and sandals, did you lack anything? Because he had sent them out earlier, actually a year or two earlier, at the beginning of the ministry. Jesus sent them out and shocked them by saying, don't take a knapsack, don't a backpack with you, don't even take sandals, I don't know what that's about, or a money bag, and just note that all your needs get taken care of, because I don't want you dependent on, we only have this amount of money, so we can only go this far. I don't want you to have any money with you. And just watch how far you can go. I don't want you to have any clothing with you. I don't have nothing with you, because you'll see that everywhere, that when you go someplace, the right people will be there. They will invite you in and say, oh, come in, we'll feed you. Because I'll already touch their hearts. The people who hate you, then you can just brush the dust off your feet and say, okay, we're out of here. And then that's how you know, okay, don't go there. Oh, do go there. So I don't want you to have anything, because I want you to know that you don't need anything. And that's going to be the majority of how I am training you, because how I'm going to use you in the future. Just trust God as opposed to trusting in, because if you trust in your finances, you'll limit yourself. Oh, I have $2 worth of stuff, so I can only do $2 worth of ministry. But if I give you nothing, then the ministry is limitless. And you'll go, wow, we just kept going, but you won't limit yourself, right? Because God, when they went into the promised land, the first time they went into the promised land, God says, everywhere the sole of your feet touches, I've given you. So it's up to them to keep walking. But a lot of times they would see the giants or see the chariots, and they wouldn't walk there. And so they wouldn't be able to get the land that God had given them, and based on their own limitations. So we limit ourselves. right? We look at our bank accounts or we look at our transportation, or oh, I can only go so far. But if God's sending you, He doesn't want you to look at that. So He says, I sent you without money bag. You had no knapsack. You had no sandals. Did you lack anything? And they said, nothing. Like, you kept supplying. Then He said to them, but now, and this is in an earlier conversation just this evening, John does not record it, but Luke does. He says, but now, here's a special occasion. He who has a money bag, let him take it. And likewise a knapsack, and he who has no sword, let him sell his garments and buy one, because you're about to go through a period of persecution in Jerusalem that you'll be shocked at the persecution that's about to come upon you. Then I'm going to make you leave Jerusalem and go to Samaria and other parts of the earth, and they'll totally accept you, because this new generation, what you don't know is the Gentiles are going to begin to be your friends, and they're going to open up to you. That's not in your brains. That just makes sense to you. And truly, if you think about times in your life where you met people and went places that you had not imagined, um, God had to prepare you so that you'd be open to going to this new place and to this new door. Sometimes He had to shut a door on purpose just so you would go into a job that you had not imagined. That's where He had programmed you to go from the beginning, but He hadn't. If He hadn't shut that door, you never would have walked through this open run, right? So there's whole things you can't imagine, whole new areas that you can't imagine, and the Gentiles, they just couldn't imagine that. So God's saying, while you stay in Jerusalem for the next 3.5 years, you better have a money bag. You need to have a knapsack. You're going to need a sword because of everything that's coming against you. So if you don't have one, buy one. Verse 37 of Luke 22 says, for I say to you that this much which is written must still be accomplished in me. You're about to go through a time period. Woo. And He was numbered with the transgressors, for the things concerning me have an end. Okay. So this particular verse, and He was numbered with the transgressors, means I'm going to be, when you look at the sinners, I'm going to be right there with them. Not because I'm sinning, but because they are going to treat me like a sinner, and they're going to come after you for a time period. It says, but the things concerning me have an end. It won't be like that always. And then I'm going to send you out, and you'll find great success, and lots of people are going to get saved. And right, but there's going to be this short time period. I just need you to be aware. Verse 38. So they said to Him, look, here are 2 swords. We happen to have 2 swords. So He says, okay, that's enough. Don't do any more than that. You're good. That's good. That's fine. Don't go beyond that. So Simon Peter had a sword because they had showed it to him earlier that day. And interestingly enough, it's not, it was against the law to carry a sword on feast day. Simon Peter didn't need it then. And Jesus was telling them, once I go, that's when you're going to need these things. He wasn't saying you need it tonight. They didn't need it that night. But we already got 2 swords. Don't worry. I wasn't worried. You don't even need those swords right now. The things concerning me have an end. It's once I'm gone. I'm talking about once I'm gone. Like, I'm with you right now. I'm going to protect you. Hello, I'm the Messiah. You don't have to freak out right now. But they were prepared. Peter was prepared because, again, he's thinking, we are going to go and take down these Romans. It's like, nah, you got it all wrong, Peter. So it says Peter drew the sword, and he drew it, and he struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. John identifies exactly who it is because he's friends with the high priest. John came from a very rich, wealthy family, and he's friends with the high priests. So he knew the high priest's servants. None of the other books, Matthew, Mark, or Luke, identified who the person was. John's telling you who it was. Now, again, he's writing his book 30 years after they wrote theirs. So if Peter was going to get in trouble for cutting off this guy's ears, it's been 30 years. It's okay. Peter's doesn't even live there anymore. So John's saying, here's exactly who that person was. And I always took it as, and I still think it is, but I always took it as John saying, let me expose how crazy Peter was. And I think that's part of his motivation. But also, let me expose how brave Peter was, because he's just about to get scared out of his mind and deny Jesus. So I want to show you that That's not necessarily Peter's personality, what he's about to do. These are strange circumstances when everybody freaked out because suddenly they grabbed Jesus and took him away. And so that's when Peter got nervous. But that's not his normal thing. So look what Peter did. Because the other, Matthew, Mark, and Luke also didn't identify that Peter did it. They just said, someone took a sword and killed and took off somebody's ear. We ain't going to tell you who it was. John is the only gospel that tells you it was Peter and it was Malchus. But again, for the purpose of, I just want you to know, this is a contrast. Peter was impetuous. Peter would grab a sword and cut somebody. So what you're about to see when he, freaks out and denies Jesus, that was out of character. So he strikes Peter. Here's part of what was building up. In Mark chapter 8, this is why Peter's all, got all this energy. Mark chapter 8, verse 31 says, Jesus began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. So he's teaching this. About halfway through the ministry, Jesus starts teaching this. And Peter's not agreeing with it, thinking, you're wrong, which is so interesting. But, I guess we all do that. God will say something to us and we'll think, nah, get thee behind me, Satan. We just think God's wrong. That's not how that's going to work out. So it says he spoke this word openly. So Jesus is telling everybody this is what's going to happen. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, which is fantastic. And he knows it's Jesus. And no, let me tell you, Jesus, why you're off. But when he had turned around and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. So Jesus turned around and said, do you hear this? So he rebuked Peter, saying, get behind me, Satan, for you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men. You're not really listening to God. You're thinking as man sees things. And again, that's all of our problems. We look at how the world sees things, and we come up with solutions to problems. Because Peter's just telling Jesus, ain't nobody going to kill you. They're not going to reject you. You're going to walk in there like a man, and you're going to tell them off, and they're going to respect you because you are a child of the king. And that's that is not at all how that's going to go. But we just think we know how it should work out. We're going to go there, we're going to preach Jesus, they're all going to fall on their knees, and they're just going to say, yes, oh my goodness, we should elect you king of this room because you said the word Jesus, and that may not be at all how God has it planned to go.
Security.
Exactly. Get these people out of here. And so we're just shocked, and I can't believe they're rejecting us. Yeah. That's how God knew how that was going to go. You just didn't guess how it was going to go. You have this whole plan. How you're going to take over this whole block. We're going to have a cross on every house. And then maybe, or maybe not. So we have to pray and say, Jesus, Lord, what do you want to have happen? But so Peter had a plan and Jesus wasn't going for it. Okay. So in John chapter 13, verse 36, it says, Simon Peter says to him, Lord, where are you going? Because remember, Jesus started talking about in my Father's house, and I'm going to prepare a place for you. And then Peter said, where are you going? And so earlier this day, so Peter already has in his mind made up. They are not taking Jesus. I had to rebuke Jesus. I rebuke you, Jesus, for saying that they're going to take you, right? So earlier when they say he's going, Jesus answered him and says, where I am going, you cannot follow me now, but you'll follow me afterwards. And this is upsetting to Peter. What are you trying to say? I can't follow you. Verse 37, Peter said to him, Lord, why can't I not follow you now? What are you trying? You implying that I'm too scared to follow you? Or, he says, I will lay down my life for your sake. So, I don't care who comes after you. I'm going to be there right by your side. So Jesus answered him, will you lay down my life for my sake? Your life for my sake? Nah. Most assuredly, I say to you, the rooster shall not crow till you have denied me 3 times. So, and I want you to know so that you don't freak out when it happens and get depressed. And Jesus is not questioning you're not really brave, Peter. It's that's actually not what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do. And I'm telling you in advance so that you don't get depressed about yourself. God knows that. And he's not mad at the flaws in us. He's not, I can't believe you missed church that Sunday. I'm so disappointed in you that you stayed home and watched the Laker game instead. God's not, oh my God, oh my goodness. I was so shocked because he knows our hearts. We're shocked that we did it. God's not shocked that we did it. So I need you to know this way you'll just come and say, oh, forgive me, Lord, as opposed to, I know God's never going to forgive me for this. Yes, he is. Already forgave you. You're the one not forgiving yourself. You're the one thinking that I treat you like the world treats you, and the world's going to hold it against you, and the world's going to say, well, this is the fifth time I asked you to do that. And that's how the world responds. We have been discussing this for 7 years, and you are still messing up. God doesn't, God knows. I knew it was going to take you 9 years to get that together. So he's not mad. But we think God's going to treat us like the world treats us, and so we freak out. Uh, Peter, I'm telling you, you're going to deny me 3 times so you don't freak out. So now Peter thinks he has to prove to Jesus, I'm a man. I would never turn it. So when the guy shows up, Peter grabs a sword and chops off his ear. See, Jesus, I told you I would lay down my life. Okay. So John 18, verse 10, still in verse 10. Now, he says the servant's name is Malchus because he wants you to know, John wants you to know exactly who it was. It's going to come up later in the chapter. Here's the good news about Malchus that John doesn't include in his gospel because everybody already knows. Luke already wrote about it. So when Luke wrote about it in Luke chapter 22, verse 51, it says, and one of them, verse 50, it says, and one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. Again, it just says, and one of them did it because at the time when they wrote their gospels, maybe 5, 10, 15 years after the instance, they're still afraid that somebody's going to come after Peter. So they don't want to say who did it. But Jesus answered and said, permit even this, meaning just calm down, slow down, calm your emotions down so that I can heal this man. And he touched his ear and healed him. So Jesus immediately heals Malchus. It's not, and his ear had been cut off. So Jesus just, I guess, put the ear back on and prayed and it just grew back. Praise the Lord. So Jesus knows this was going to happen and said, so calm down. But I allowed you to cut off his ear because to show you how emotional you get and how out of control you get. So I'm not stopping you from doing it because I need you to check yourself and go, wow, I need to slow down. Look I'm crazy. So Jesus says to Peter, John chapter 18, verse 11, put your sword in the sheath. And we know that he says, he who lives by the sword will die by the sword. If that's going to be the way you handle everything immediately, you're going to get in trouble then. He who lives by God will die by God. You know, I mean, if the first thing you do is think of God, then God will rule your life. If the first thing you think of is, let me grab my sword every time something's about to happen, okay, that's going to rule your life then. So we have to decide when we're disappointed by something, when we're surprised by something, when we're hurt by something, when we're angered by something, do we go to anger first? Is that our first thing? I'm ready to cuss you out. Is that the first thing that always? Because then you can't be surprised what comes back in your life. We want to train ourselves, if we can, that when we're shocked, surprised, disappointed, angry, so that we say, okay, Jesus, if that could just become, we can just train ourselves that that's the first thing, then we're going to hear a clear answer and know what to do in a situation. Peter, first thing I'm going to grab my sword. It's like, okay. If that's going to be your answer, then all right. But that's going to come, because whatever you sow, that comes back at you. So he says, put away your sword. He says, shall I not drink the cup which my Father has given me? You're trying to prevent the thing that God has laid in my path. Big lesson here, right? Sometimes we are trying to prevent the very thing that God put in our path. It just reminds me of, is it Balaam or Balak? Balaam, I think, on the donkey, and the donkey keeps stopping because there's an angel there, and he keeps, Balaam? Yeah. So, and he's, and the donkey's like, you don't see this angel here? God has put an angel there to stop you because you are walking into danger. And sometimes there's things that God has put in our path. We're still trying to, gosh, it was just a second ago that I was somewhere, and we think when the car won't start, oh, that's the devil. Maybe that's the Lord slowing you down. You know, everything is not always the devil. Uh, anyway, so he's saying to Peter, shouldn't I drink this cup? All this that's about to happen, God's allowing this. You're trying to stop the cup that God is giving me to drink. I'm supposed to go to the cross. I'm supposed to have, they're supposed to take me off, Peter. Slow down. Uh, this same cup, and Jesus had mentioned this cup to them. In Matthew chapter 20, John and James's mother, they're the Zebedee brothers, right? The Lord, what do they call them? The brothers of thunder. Because they wanted to call thunder and lightning down on people. So he had a funny name for them. So their mother shows up. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons in Matthew 20:20, kneeling down and asking something from him. And he said to her, what do you wish? So she said, and he knew, but he needed her to say it out loud. Grant that these two sons of mine may sit, one at your right hand and the other in your left in your kingdom. So this is the place of honor that you have to have earned. In any kingdom, the people sit at the right and left. They've done some fantastic feat of honor in order to sit there. So you want them to sit at my right and my left. Okay. In verse 22, Jesus answered and said, you don't really know what you're asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I'm about to drink? And be baptized with the baptism that I'm about to be baptized with? Because the cup that I'm going to drink, you think it's this victory cup. Right after, we've got victory. Take the grapes and squeeze them and we'll drink the wine of victory. Are you really able to drink the cup? Because you don't know what cup I'm about to drink from. And the baptism that I'm about to be baptized with, what I'm about to go through, okay? And they said, oh, we're able, yeah. Because they just see victory secured in a certain way. Because Jesus got the victory. When he went to the cross, he was getting the victory. But he had to go to the cross to get the victory. And sometimes we're going to get the victory, but there's some fire you're going to go through. And we're going to get the victory in the end. But it may be, you may have to stay up for, 20 nights in a row studying the Bible. Or, it's like, ooh, this is difficult. But the victory comes in the end. Are you really able to get it? Because you think it's just walking in. Jesus is telling them, I'm just going to walk in and raise my sword, and everybody's going to fall down and go, oh, he's here. And we believe now. But boy, what you may have to go through in order for somebody to believe, what they're going to have to see you, the commitment that you're going to have to give, that even when they throw you in jail and you sing, when they threaten you to take your life with the sword and you say, fine, that's what's going to make people go, wow, it's real. Because it's easy when you're getting the Cadillacs and the limousines and living and flying on your plane across that. Ooh, that person, that rich person who owns 50 hotels and is in the lap of luxury. Well, yeah, who wouldn't want that? But anybody would want that. It's wow, look how they're suffering and yet still loving Jesus. That's what the story of Job is all about. Look how those people really believe. Who wouldn't believe if the prize was, 15 Mercedes? Yeah, I'll believe in that God who gives you 15 Mercedes. He wants to know, when it's hard, will you still believe? That's the point of the book of Job. Have you considered my servant Job? He totally believes in me no matter what. Well, yeah, because look how rich he is and expensive. That's what the devil says to God. And God says, put your hand on everything he has. Take it all away. See what Job says. And he says, the Lord is given, the Lord is taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. He didn't say, the wife came to him and said, you should just curse God and die. And I hate you, God. You took away everything. It's like, have I not received good from the hand? Should I not accept bad? It's like, I love him because of who he is, not because of what he gives me. So if he takes everything away, I still love him. That is the type of faith where people go, okay, I want that type of faith. That person believes in, that's a real God that person believes in. So Jesus is saying to them, I don't think this cup that I'm about to drink, I'm obedient to death, even my death on the cross. That's the obedience that I was willing to get on the cross for you. That type of love and devotion to that God, that's what changed the world. But I don't think you're ready for that kind of cup. Oh, yeah, we are. Okay. So Jesus says to them in verse 23 of Matthew 20. So he says to them, okay, well, you actually will indeed drink my cup. You, John, and you, James, you're going to be martyred. You're going to be sent to the Isle of Patmos for 20 years. Yeah, that is true. You're just not prepared for it. And you're going to be baptized with the baptized that I'm being baptized with. But still, to sit at my right hand and on my left hand, that's not mine to give. So sorry, you have to just do these things because you love me and not because you know what that you're going to have this incredible reward in the end. You have to do it because you recognize that I'm God and not for all. Oh, I get a crown, but you're going to lay the crown at my feet because you're not doing it for the crown. You're doing it because I'm God and I've laid by my life for you, because greater man love hath no man that he lay down his life for his friends. Because I'm doing that for you, you're going to feel like you want to do that back for me. Well, he laid down his life for me. I want to do that for him. But to sit at my right hand and my left, that's not mine to give. So do it because you love me. Okay. So, and this cup, Jesus is referring specifically to Ezekiel 23. Israel has gone crazy. They're doing bad stuff, and God is warning them about the cup that you're going to have to drink. And yet, even after you drink the cup, I want you to still love me. In Ezekiel 23, verse 32, he says, thus says the Lord God, you shall drink of your sister's cup. He's saying this to Jerusalem, and the sister is Samaria. All the bad stuff that Samaria went through, you're going to drink of that same cup. He says, the deep and wide one. You shall be laughed to scorn and held in derision. People are going to make fun of you. Ha ha ha. You went into captivity and the Babylonians, and yet you're going to still have to come back, build a temple, worship me. He says, it contains much, this cup, and you will be filled with drunkenness and sorrow, the cup of horror and desolation, the cup of your sister Samaria. And it goes on to say, but I still need you to love me and accept that cup. So I'm telling you in advance. And so Jesus is saying, once God has told you what your cup is, you say, okay, that's my cup. I'm not going to play. We go, well, I quit then. If I can't win, I quit. If I don't get first place, I quit. Once we find out what the assignment is, I quit. Who tried to quit? Moses tried to quit. Jonah. My cup is that I have to go to Nineveh and preach to them, and I quit. And so when we find out what the cup is, we want to quit because we've already designed. My ministry is a ministry in Paris. I have a ministry of eating French pastries. Bonjour. And getting French chefs saved. And so that's the ministry that I want. And God says, no, your ministry is going to be going out and talking to those homeless people every day and blah, blah, blah. I quit. That's your cup, right? Whatever the cup. I don't know what the cup is. Somebody's cup is ministering to French chefs of Europe. Somebody's cup, that's their cup. Bless their hearts. You don't know what your cup's going to be. Will you accept your cup and say, hey, that's fine. I don't quit now that I know what my cup is. So that's why he says to him, should I not drink the cup which the Father's given me? So back to now, verse 12. Wow, all that was just John 11 and 10 and 11. Okay, so John 18, verse 12. Then the detachment of troops and the captain and the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him, and they led him away to Annas first, for he was father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. So Annas had been the high priest earlier, and now Caiaphas, his son-in-law, was the high priest. But they didn't Annas first because Annas knew more than the son-in-law, Caiaphas. Now it was Caiaphas who advised the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. Like, this is good that one man died for the people. Yes, but you don't even know how God is using your words. So Peter freaks out, and John does not mention any of all of that because you've already read it in Matthew, Luke, and Mark. You've already read it. So he's just skipping ahead. So, verse 15, Simon Peter follows Jesus. And this passage is all just about Simon Peter. He follows Jesus, and so did another disciple, and that's himself. He says, now that disciple was known to the high priest and went with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest. John is friends with the high priest family because he comes from a rich family. He walks right in. Simon Peter stays outside. Peter stood at the door outside. Then the other disciple who was known to the high priest went out and spoke to her who kept the door and brought Peter in. So John said, let him come on in. So now Peter's inside. And then the servant girl who kept the door said to Peter, you are not also one of the man's disciples, are you? He said, oh, no, I'm not, because he's freaking out. They knew that John was, so they didn't ask John. They knew that John was. Peter, they were kind of recognizing, wait, I think I know you. Are you? And said, no, not me. Because Peter's world has changed. He had it all plotted out. If they try to take Jesus, I'm going to rescue Jesus. I'm going to stop them. And they'll just flee when they see my sword. Oh, I'm surprised they didn't flee when they saw your sword. They still took Jesus anyway. So now Peter doesn't know what to do and we don't know what to do when we have it all planned out and God doesn't go according to our plan. So when they say, you're with him, no, I'm not, because my world is upside down now. You may grab me at any moment and crucify me. I don't really get what's going on. I thought this man was going to protect me from all harm, and yet they've got him. And Jesus is like, I am still protecting you. You just don't know it because you're looking at the circumstances, don't realize it. I'm still protecting you. But if these think, well, they've got Jesus, anything can happen to me. Not right now. Right now is about me, Peter. So the high priest then asked Jesus, I'm sorry. So now the servants and officers, verse 18, who had made a fire of coals stood there, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves. And Peter stood with them and warmed himself. So they're all standing there, the servants and officers, right? And the high priest then asked Jesus about his disciples and his doctrine, which is making Peter nervous because he's hearing this. And Jesus answered him and said, I spoke openly to the world. I'm not hiding anything. I always taught in the synagogues and the temple where the Jews always meet. And in secret, I've said nothing. I went to the temple every day, preached openly. So why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. Indeed, they know what I said. You're trying to get some sort of confession out of me. Ask the people around if that is your intention to find out my doctrine, because that's not your intention. I happen to know your intention. So Jesus is trying to expose the person and help him see what he's really after. So when he said these things, one of the officers who stood by struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, saying, do you answer the high priest like that? And Jesus answered him, if I've spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why do you strike me? It's okay to strike somebody because what did I say? I said, I spoke in the temple. I said, you can ask anybody what I said because they were witnesses, and that's what you're supposed to do. Let it be established in the mouths of 2 or 3 witnesses. I'm not supposed to bear against myself, the law says. You're not doing right. You're supposed to ask the witnesses and let it be established in the mouths of 2 or 3 witnesses. So then Annas sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest, like, ooh, what do we do? Because he's right. So now Simon Peter stood and warmed himself. And again, Caiaphas, his balcony was like right across from Annas. They just went to Annas first. Annas came on his balcony, right across his Caiaphas. So Peter doesn't have to go anywhere. He just has to turn his body toward the other balcony. Now Peter stood and warmed himself. Therefore they said to him again, you are not also one of the disciples, are you? Because they're surprised. Why aren't you up there with him? Like John is up there with him. Why aren't you? He said, no, I'm not. No, I'm not one of the disciples. Because Peter's confused. I had a scenario in my mind. This is not going right. I don't know what to do. One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of him whose ear Peter cut off. That's why John wants you to know it was Malchus. And so this is his cousin, says to him, did I not see you in the garden with him? Are you not, he's about to say, aren't you the guy who cut off my cousin's ear? And Peter then denied again, and immediately a rooster crowed. So then okay, you know what? I'm going to stop there because, so this is Peter's world. Peter's trying to live by the sword. Okay, so Peter, you drew out that sword and you thought that would solve everything. And now you're even denying that you even used the sword. So what did that do for you? Isn't it best, Peter, and Jesus has been trying to tell Peter from the beginning, here's how things are going to go. And Peter's like, no, it's not. And Jesus says, okay, we'll see when we get there. Let us not be Peters and have the scenario so fixed in our heads that we're like, it's going to go like this, it's going like that, and this is what's going to happen. So that when the real things start to happen, we are freaking out and we're lost. Let's wake up each morning and say, okay, Lord, I want to, you direct my day, because when I direct my day, it doesn't go the way I plan. Help me to follow you today. Help me to make sure I'm doing what you wanted me to do so that when things don't go my way, I don't freak out. I go, oh, okay. God, you've got this. Don't let me be a Peter where I want to pull out my sword right away and why you didn't do what I said to do. Because that's not going to get me anything other than more confused. Help me to be John and just follow along. Okay, this is the way it's going, and I'm good with it because I know that it's not a surprise to you. Us thinking, because Peter's thinking Jesus is lost too. Jesus doesn't even know what's going on. So I know I don't know what's going on. If I understand this is all part of the plan, then I won't freak out. So help me to not have not such a strong idea of how every day should go that when it doesn't go my way, it just gets me all out of sorts because then I'm not listening to the Holy Spirit. Help me just to relax and say, okay, this is not a surprise. This is not a surprise. This is not a surprise. And so that I can just follow with you and not deny what you are doing. The good news is we still end up where we're supposed to be, but we're crazed and stressed out while we're there. Our denial of it doesn't prevent it from happening. Jonah denying didn't mean he still ended up preaching to Nineveh. Moses still ended up delivering the children of Israel, but he was angry the whole time at them and screaming at them. Jonah's mad the whole time. I'm just suggesting God wins in the end, and we could be relaxed through it all, or we can be and then have to look up later like Joseph and go, oh, let me stop trying to put my brothers in jail. This was all part of the plan. Let me stop trying to threaten them, and this is part of the plan. Lord, don't help me not to miss the plan and recognize, even if somebody meant it for evil, God's allowing it for my good. So I can go with God's plan and be happy and praising God in prison the whole time, singing songs and hymns and saying, oh, this is all part of the plan. Or I can be in prison and crazed the whole time. That's up to us. But thank God that God's will is still done in our lives. I don't want to be one of those preachers and say, you can mess up God's will, because we can't. Nothing that Peter did messed up. Nothing. He cut off that ear. Jesus just healed it back on. We don't see in the Bible where people messed up God's plan, where God turned around and said, you had not done that. Things would have been so much smoother. That doesn't happen anywhere. So I'm saying this for our good. Let us try to relax and just understand God knows what's going on. And that way we can hear his instructions and we can be quicker to be honest, right there with him like John and not over in some corner going, I don't know who Jesus is, crazed, right? We want to be a joyful part of his plan as opposed to just reluctantly being dragged along. But again, the good news is even if we miss it, if we look up years later and go, oh, Lord, I was fighting that whole time. Surprise, you still got dragged exactly where God wanted you to go. No, you cannot mess up his plans. Nope. You still, in the end, look up and go, thank you, Jesus. I'm still where you wanted me to be, even though I was fighting and screaming the whole time. Okay, so I'm going to stop there because it switches. It's no longer about Peter, and Peter is the lesson of the day. All right. Thank you so much. I apologize that for those of you who do try to listen, the night that I teach, that I was late. And those of you who are watching tomorrow or a week from now or whatever, you could care less. It doesn't mean anything to you. So thank you for listening in. We'll continue with this night that God has planned in Jesus' life, this cup that God gave Jesus to drink, that he says, I'm going to drink it. I'm not going to just toss it out. I'm drinking this cup. I'm not going to reject it. Help us to be that, to recognize the cup that Jesus put in front of us, that God's put in front of us. Whatever it is, it could be, again, it could be a cup full of French pastries. It could be wonderful. It's not always bad, but whatever it is, it's not necessarily what we thought it was going to be. Help us to accept that cup and drink it joyfully. Okay, so thank you for tuning in. I will see you, some of you, this Sunday for Sunday school in the book of Exodus, and others who I'll see you next week. All right, bye bye.